Hey, this is Scott, and today I'm here with Akane, and she's going to model for us. I'm using one of the Kate backdrop hand-painted canvas backdrops. A while ago I reviewed one of their other backdrops actually together with Akane, and today they sent me one of these hand-painted canvas ones which are really awesome. You can get them customized to whatever color scheme you want. I got this simple gray one which looks a little bit orange right now because I have an orange light shined on it. But that's the reason that I got it, is because you can use it very flexibly. You can put color gels on there very easily. You can make it bright, you can make it dark. So I went with something like this, and it gives a little bit more texture than just a straight gray background. These hand-painted backdrops are painted onto a nice, thick and heavy-duty canvas, and it comes rolled instead of folded. This helps to keep those creases out too, which is nice, but make sure not to store it laying on its side if that's possible, because that can create waves in it from sitting on its own weight, just like with seamless paper. There's a cardboard tube inside, and to hang this up you can of course use a typical backdrop stand through that tube, or what I did here was just to use the boom arms of two C-stands stuck into each end. To stop it from rolling all the way out, I just used some A-clamps to hold it in place. We just finished up our photo shoot, did a couple of different variations, so I'm going to show you some behind the scenes of that, and I'll show you the resulting photos, and hopefully you can see a little bit of what I did personally with this backdrop. I like to blur out the backgrounds of my photos. I was shooting with the Canon EOS R and the 85 1.4, the IS new lens from Canon, and I was shooting at 1.4 pretty much the whole time. So the background is kind of blurred out, but that's the way I like it, and that's why I like that you can have this kind of texture there to give it a little bit more interest than just a simple plain gray background. So I like the way the photos came out, hopefully you do too, but let's get into it and look at those behind the scenes. So in all of these shots, I'm using a combination of the Aputure 120D Mark II together with the mini and regular Lightroom Mark II. And in the back, I have a couple of blade lights from Flowlight. I have the 18-inch and 36-inch versions, and I use these both as rim lights and on the background. In the setup, I used the Light Dome Mini together with the grid in a pretty much typical beauty type setup with it kind of overhead and a reflector underneath. I just let the light fall off on the background, which made it basically fall to black, and I was using the flow lights as rim lights to just give her a little bit of a highlight or an outline against that black background. So in this next setup, I had pretty much the same setup overall, but I threw a 120D Mark I literally just on the floor with a standard reflector and some diffusion paper taped over that to shine onto the background and give it a little bit of a light that kind of falls off towards the edges of the photos. And I really like the way that it looks here. Of course it's really blurred out, but it gives it a little bit more interest than just a solid background. So I really like the way that it looks in this kind of setup, and this is how I typically use my backdrops anyway, so this looks really great for me. In the setup, I wanted to go with something a little bit more moody and dark and dramatic, but I did still want to do something with the background, so I took both of the blade lights and turned them to 3200 Kelvin, and the one on the right, the 36-inch blade light, I closed down the barn doors and kind of tilted it at an angle to get that slash of light across the background. And because this background is kind of like a middle gray, almost a little bit on the blue side, it takes on that light really nicely. I like how the light looks on that, even when you change the color temperature. And then the light on the left side kind of bounced off her hair, which is a little bit colored, so it gives it a little bit more of a red color on that left side, which I think plays nicely with the multiple colors here. And I had a negative fill on the left side just to deepen those shadows a little bit. In this case, I just simply asked the model to turn around and face the other way. I wanted to see how it looked throwing her face actually into a little bit more darkness, a little bit more mystery, and I just lowered the power of the 120D, and I believe I lowered the power of the 18-inch blade light as well, just so that way it wasn't as overpowering, so that way this was even more dark and moody than the previous picture. In this shot, I wanted to go back towards a little bit of a brighter, cleaner look, so I turned all of the lights back to daylight balance, and I turned the 36-inch blade light towards the background just to give it a kind of even brightness. And again, it's kind of like a middle gray, but look a little bit on the blue side of that middle gray, so in this case it looks a little bit blue, and I really like the way that the colors play here with that slightly blue background. That's a little bit brighter, but still not overpowering, and it has that little bit of texture to it, which I think gives it a good interest. I have the shorter blade light on the left side, just giving her a little bit of a highlight on the left side of her face. And then I'm using the 120D Mark II with the larger light dome, no grid, just in a kind of Rembrandt type position here with a reflector under her to fill in those shadows just a little bit. Now this is exactly the same setup as the previous shot, except that I switched the blade light on the background over to a tungsten color balance, and I did raise the reflector a little bit closer to her face because I was going closer in, and I really wanted to fill in those shadows a bit more. And then I had her pose not looking towards the light or looking towards the camera, just to give it a little bit of a different feel than the previous shot. In this setup, I stuck with the larger light dome, but I threw the grid on there, and I moved it over to the side, kind of a side lighting instead of the Rembrandt position lighting. And I used the grid because I didn't want the daylight 120D to spill onto the background where I had the tungsten balanced blade light. I want to keep those colors separate, and I do still have the shorter blade light giving a little bit of a kicker light on the left side there. But I also used a black reflector on the left side of her to kind of darken those shadows a little bit and give this kind of slightly dramatic look, although it's not quite as dark as my previous shots. Be sure to check out katebackdrops.com to see more details about these and other backdrops from Kate. I've been really satisfied with the quality here, considering how much hand-painted backdrops can typically cost. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave that down below and I will do my best to get back to you. If you like this video or found it helpful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to see more in the future, and as always, thank you for watching.